Yesterday, Ken Ofori-Atta presented the Nkunim budget, what he's described as the Nkunim budget. And this morning we've been telling you some of the highlights of the budget. So we're about to start the conversation. And the most important thing is, what's in it for all of us? For me, that's the basic question. You've heard everything, but what's in it for you? This morning we're joined by the Executive Chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, John Awuni. We're also joined by Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Ghana, Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour, who joins us via Zoom, and John Awuni joins us on the phone. Good morning, Dr. Twumasi Baffour, and good morning to you, Mr. Awuni. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Winston.
Great.
Thank you for having us, and a happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Doc. Let me start off with you, Doc. And so you listened to the finance minister yesterday. You've listened to him outline all the measures he believes would help transform this economy. What do you make of the measures, and how do you think these measures would help transform the country?
Thank you once again, Winston. I believe that this is a budget that is coming on the back of an IMF program, also a second budget post-COVID recovery. And so essentially, under an IMF program, you do not expect a budget which is quite audacious in terms of rolling out a number of policies that are supposed to engineer growth in the economy, because the emphasis under a program like that would be an austerity measure. You have been struggling, you want to stabilize your macro fundamentals. So essentially, the emphasis of this budget is basically on macroeconomic stability, but you also see that there's been an attempt to try to inject a few productive sectors of the economy. But when you look at it carefully, you see that even as that attempt is made, you realize that government is not really putting in a lot of resources, because we are not in a position to, for example, to afford those kinds of things. And so I give a number of instances. So for example, the growth projection of 2.8, non-oil projection of 2.1, is a very moderate one, because we know that in periods of austerity where government is consolidating its expenditure, you don't expect the economy to grow significantly. Government is a major player in an economy like ours. So if it is cutting back and constraining on spending, you know that it will certainly have a contractionary impact on the economy. So when you come to issues of expenditure, that is where I would want to see where the expenditure is going, for example. And so in that instance, there are a number of things that have been rolled out. I'm trying to quickly look at a few of them. And so you see that, for instance, there's been tax breaks that have been given to a number of institutions. For example, there is the issue of a zero tax rate on sanitary products. That is a great initiative, for instance, and that is coming to some extent as an expense to the public payers, in the sense that those resources will not be generated. And also the stimulation to raw materials for the production of sanitary pad. That is a great social initiative, because girls should not be penalized for menstruating, for instance. Yeah, but, when you look at other sectors,
that particular one, Doc, I mean, the bit about the sanitary pads, you're looking at, for instance, a waiver of duty on the import of raw materials for it, and 15%, I mean, scrapping the 15% VAT on locally manufactured. The critical question is, what volumes of usage are produced locally, what volumes are imported for use, and how will that impact these young girls?
Sure. So that, just like I was saying, the the right way to go, for example, was to reduce import duties on this, because the reason is that the local productive capacity is not that much. I think I heard yesterday that we have about 4 main producers of the products, but the reality is that government could not afford, if you look at the expense that will be incurred if you are supposed to take out completely the taxation on imported product, because majority of the products are imported. The question I ask really is that how are we going to implement this, for example? And in terms of in this budget, when you look at the reliefs that have been given, it appears that we are emphasizing a lot on zero-rated tax on this, zero-rated tax on that. That also coming on the back that Ghana is championing after, for example, it's somehow problematic in a sense that all these are barriers that are being created. I know that under WTO rules, for example, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, for instance, there is what we call the national treatment. You are not supposed to treat goods that come into your country differently from goods that are imported. If you have any issue, you need to impose the tariff at the point of entry and not when the goods have come in, then you begin to discriminate. So I am looking at how implementation would be done in the first place, and also whether the average Ghanaian who buys the locally produced sanitary pad would even feel it in the first place, because there need to be a lot of awareness for people to know the brands that are produced locally and the brands that are not, and also in terms of enforcement at the point of sale to let us know that traders are not putting VAT on these products. But when it comes to the technicalities of it, I know that it may not be in the now, but in future, Ghana may potentially have to face a few issues with some of these, because when it happens, you are on after championing Africa free trade, you are encouraging your goods to go to other countries, yet you are imposing restrictions on goods that are coming from other African countries. So those are some of the issues that I think I pick there in terms of the zero-rated treatment of some of the goods that are have been outlined in the budget.
Okay. I'll get back to you. This morning we're joined by Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour, who is a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics of the University of Ghana. And we're also joined by John Awuni, who's executive chairman of the Food and Beverages Association of Ghana. Now, Mr. Awuni, prior to the presentation of the budget, you had lots of expectations. You had been doing a lot of advocacy. You've been calling for a reduction of taxes here and there because you felt businesses were, collapsing as a result. Were your expectations met? You've, I'm sure by now you've read a lot of the budget. What's your take?
Well, thank you very much, Winston. Generally, I would say that my expectations have not been met. Taking cognizance of the requests that we made, the proposals that we made, presentations that we made to the Minister of Trade, the Minister of Finance, and the advocacy that we did in the media. We requested, it was our view that COVID-19 levy should be removed. It was our general view that the excise tax on food and drinks should be removed. It was our view that they should kind of remove the special import levy at the port. It was our view that they should have a bit of interest in the way electricity tariffs are reviewed, particularly in the manufacturing sector. It was our view that they should kind of engender some kind of activity in the private sector. We wanted to see a budget that would reflect in the lives of the common man, that come 1st January, when you go into the market to buy kinky, it may reflect in that price of the kinky. We wanted to see that if you go and buy wache, it will reflect in the price of the wache. That at least even the wache price will not go down, it should stabilize. But as it is now, it doesn't look so. In the budget, the exchange rate is like it points out that like we are kind of comfortable with the 12 cedis to $1 that we have. So we say that the exchange rate is stabilized. But I haven't, maybe I may miss it, but I haven't seen any serious effort pointed out in the budget that we are hoping that in the year 2024, second quarter, third quarter, the USD will reduce, the cedi will strengthen against the US dollar so that we could get to 9 cedis or 7 cedis or 8 cedis to $1. That is one particular thing that could have brought a lot of hope to the private sector. Because one thing that erodes the capital of the private sector generally is the exchange rate. And the level of unpredictability of that we have in the market in this country leaves much to be desired. So we thought that much would have been done with the exchange rate, but nothing like that was talked about, that the exchange rate will go down and then all that. So generally our hopes have not been met, our expectations have not been met. The private sector is still going to be the same because, as I mentioned earlier, COVID-19 is there. Even e-levy, it could have been reduced to reflect so that today, when you ask the common man on the street, the budget, how will it impact possibility? Oh, I think I used to pay this percentage on e-levy. Now it's been reduced. So come 1st January, I will benefit this. This is something that you would do to recognize.
Mr. Awuni, are you suggesting that, Mr. Awuni,
you recognize the difficulty that your citizens are going through? But as it is now, nothing like that in the budget. Yes, you have come out with some bit of exemptions, sanitary pads. And as my colleague, the doctor, said, how many people use the sanitary pads? Even then, as it has been the tradition for most of the ministry, we will never have any minister of health, particularly in the area of sanitary pads, or minister of trade, will try to meet shop owners and say that, listen, our expectation is that we want to promote the use of locally produced sanitary pads. So we want to sell this percentage by the close of 2024. So how are you going to help us? You see, the whole general picture is that importers are criminals. They are anti-economy. So they will never meet. Throughout my participation in the private sector for over 20 years, I have not had any minister of trade or minister of agric who has come into power and then invite businessmen and then key businessmen and say that this is my vision for the sector. How will you help me to achieve this? Say Minister of Agric comes in and then meets a lot of importers of rice or chicken and says, this is my vision. I want to increase the production of locally produced chicken or rice to this percentage. How will you help me to sell this? How will you help me to achieve this? The Bible says that make the vision plain, and they that read the vision shall run thereof. We sometimes don't even know the vision of the minister or that. So clearly, and even the 2024 budget still points out to that. So you have people still going in to look out for local, to buy sanitary pads, and they will be looking for foreign sanitary pads. Even the quantity of sanitary pads produced in this country, as the doctor pointed out, we are not self-sufficient. And I don't think that it could have, even if you were giving complete tax exemption, give some bit of tax reduction with the imported one so that your citizens too can benefit. But when you go like zero rated on sanitary pads, zero rated on electric vehicles, as I sit now, if you give me an electric vehicle, I wouldn't accept it because I'm not even sure that if it does have problem, I will have the required people in this country to repair it. So how many young men will go and buy electric vehicles? Also to say, we say the throttle people will begin to use electric vehicles. Will they accept it? So if you give zero rated on electric vehicles, you have done nothing for your citizens. If you give zero rated on sanitary pads, locally produced, yes, the manufacturers may have lobbied for that. Good for the few manufacturers around. But on the collective, your citizens, the generality, it doesn't have much impact. I will say that the budget is, I take cognizance of the fact that the budget is produced, like the doctor said, under the IMF program. The hands of the Minister of Finance is tied. But I still thought that just to show a commitment or to show that a recognition of what is happening in the private sector, COVID-19 levy at least should have been removed.
Okay.
We cannot, WHO have cancelled COVID-19. We still have COVID-19 levy. So come 2024, we are still going to be paying COVID-19. E-levy, it could have been reduced. Nothing like that has happened. People are really going through something in this country. And sometimes The tendency is that when you are at the helm of affairs, you fail to recognize what people are saying. So you think that whatever complaints people are making, it is just their selfish interest. But that is not so. We are giving feedback to you that the private sector is not doing well. The mass level of unemployment is at its threatening level. It's a complete security threat to this country. Government cannot absorb that. It is the private sector that can absorb that. So you need to do something to the private sector. And we are complaining that taxation is the problem. Over-taxation is the problem of the private sector. If you look at the manufacturing sector in the year 2023 under review, it contracted by 2.2%. How is it going to grow in the year 2024 to overcome the 2.2% negative to now even a positive level? It is not. And if we have a government that came in with the mantra that you are going to move us from taxation to production, or for that matter, you are moving this country from the gadget-based economy, meaning that you are going to use manufacturing sector as the anchor of development. We cannot have this whole thing still affecting the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
The cost of doing business is very, 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 very high. Ghana has no competitive or comparative advantage. And that's the reason why we have, in recent times, we have mass level of smuggled goods through the Cote d'Ivoire and Togo and many other places into the country, because people are trying to see how they can evade some taxes so that they can sell the goods below the tax level, so that they can be able to make their company survive. Okay. So the budget should have recognized that, considering the fact that the borders of this country are very, very, very porous. You cannot use taxation to prevent imports. You cannot use high taxation to prevent imports. You can only reduce it so that you can enhance compliance.
Okay.
And I don't see this budget pointing to the level. So come 2024, we are still going to have GRA officers and officers sitting down at the doorsteps of the Abosokai shops, sitting down in the offices of companies, doors of companies, insisting that they must pay taxes and all that. And when we get to the realm where the taxation is not convenient, as one of the canons of taxation, the tax must be convenient, and you have to force people to pay the tax, then it becomes very problematic and unsustainable. And generally, economists agree tax cuts have very, very positive effect on revenue mobilization. Whether it is consumer tax, whether it is income tax, or it is corporate tax, it will go a long way to increase demand. Okay. It will go a long way to increase production. It will go a long way to increase government revenue mobilization.
Please hold on for me, Mr. Awuni. I'll get back to you. Please hold on for me. I'll get back to you. Because you've talked about how, a reduction can help, but also, most importantly, now that you've talked about all the things that you expected that weren't done, going forward, how is this going to impact on your business and by extension the consumer? We'll also be finding that's out from Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour. We've also talked about whether she agrees with some of the suggestions that at this point in time the best way to go would have been tax reduction and not these incentives that do not really matter, in the words of John Awuni. Yeah. Raymond, before you go, I know you'd have to leave, but before you go, there's been this whole talk about the economy reaching 1 trillion next year. And I'd ask Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour this question also after asking you. But the other question is this. If you look at it from the past, a reference to the 2016, is it appropriate for us to reference 2016, where at the time, if you did the calculation, by way of the cedi rate, so dollar terms, yes, 56 billion. Currently, it's at 69 billion with a current dollar term. If next year we look at 1 trillion and there is no depreciation of the Ghana cedi, and we are able to maintain what we have today, what that would mean is that we then would have, an economy that is in dollar terms worth about 80 billion.
So we've done 56 to 80 billion
yes,
in almost 8 years.
In 8 years.
If this was the standard for, let's say, you run a company and that you are supposed to show proof of growing the economy or growing the lot of the company, would you have been happy as a shareholder? You Ghanaians are shareholders, right? So would you have been happy as a shareholder? it's of course we I'm one of those to admit that we've had serious challenges, and those challenges perhaps are beaten down. When you compare to certain countries, when you compare even in the sub-region, let's be fair, even in Africa, when you compare to certain individuals' wealth and all of the other things that comes to play, I'm not so sure whether we are too excited we are getting to 1 billion or so, because the dollar terms of it does not look like any huge thing to be very proud of. But I actually think that the people in this republic care more about whether or not they are going to buy food at prices that are reasonable, or whether or not they can do business with the environment that they have. It's okay to presume if the economy happens to be very huge and it's for a select few, and there's so much inequality in the society, is it something that we really admire, we really want to have as a country? So, I mean, there are so many factors to it, but we sometimes want to act like we are just looking for some news that appear good news to share. And because of that, we nitpick at not so relevant or huge endeavors to do so, like how we are happy about completing first round of IMF negotiations and also going through these processes. We, the Black Star of Africa, should move beyond some of these conversations. This is not the kind of economy Nkrumah anticipated the Republic would have. So that's what I have the difficulty with these needless projections. So we'll get to 1 trillion, we'll get to that. Yes, the economy may likely grow, but if you do from 56 to 80 in almost 7 good years, when compared to others are doing massive work within that same space of time, and others are showing real improvements. They are bridging that gap between the rich and the poor, and they are making sure that inequality is not a very big issue in their countries. Those are the things we should start measuring ourselves with.
Okay. Since you just joined us, let me start off with you, Joseph Obing, who's president of GUTA. So you are suggesting that you're going to have to pass on the cost to us. You didn't see anything in the budget that would enable you to reduce the prices of your goods?
No. Normally, business, you have to calculate your cost, and then you pass it on to the consumer. That's how the natural sequence is. But as it were now, it is also a challenge because of inflation. You see, it is not in our best interest to punish our consumer. The business that we do not do it in isolation. We do it with our consumers. So if they are not doing well, it means that it affects our growth also. In this particular situation, the inflation has eaten away the purchasing power of our consumers. So we cannot say that because they do not do anything to give us relief in taxes, we are going to pass everything, where it is also not possible. So in this situation, you are unable to have the necessary turnover that you want to enable you pay your bank loans and then the supplier's credit that you've gotten. And that's what we say that is a very challenging situation.
So how are you going to cope then? I mean, if you don't pass it on, how are you going to cope as a business?
No, I'm not saying you are not passing it on, but I say that you even have the challenge of passing it on.
So you will pass it on?
You pass it on anyway. But whether the consumer have the capacity to buy the volumes that they used to buy, that is being the problem. So if your turnover is curtailed, because when prices go up, definitely it is not in the interest of the trader or the business person, because the business thrives on turnover. So if your turnover is curtailed, all that it means is that you are unable to service your debt. And it's as simple as that, unless the person does not know what business is all about.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are a kind of challenge. Yeah.
Okay. So let me get a very clear understanding. How is this budget going to impact businesses? Tell me.
So negatively, because already we are out of competition. Because the business that we do it in competition with the rest of the sub-region, what we call the cross-border trading. When we import our goods into Ghana, we expect that Togo people come and buy. Much as we also go and buy from Togo. In this particular instance, most of the goods that we import here, our own people leave the shores of Ghana, change their foreign exchange, go to Togo and buy their goods. That is also imported because cost of doing business in that destination is far cheaper than that of Ghana. So we are losing out in competition.
But at least if you look at, I mean, when it comes to sanitary pads, for instance, there's been, removal of import duties on raw materials for its manufacture, zero VAT rate for local manufacture. Is that not a good one that would actually enable you to buy locally at reduced rates? Wouldn't that help you?
Yeah, that is the spirit. That's what we seek for the generality of the manufacturing sector. So if they can get it, it's also good because, like I'm telling you, if you are able to expand it to cover a lot more businesses in the manufacturing sector, so be it. Because when their produce is cheaper, we do not even have to travel as importers to go and buy from elsewhere. We have to buy it from them. So any thing that we do to boost the local production of our manufacturers is in our favor. Because let me tell you, there's a company in Tema called Avinash. They produce oil. Now we visited their plant and they've shut it down because the oil that they manufacture in Ghana they cannot sell because there is another manufacturing oil manufacturing company in Togo who sells far cheaper than that company in Ghana. They bring the goods from Togo, come and sell it cheaper. So it is in the best interest. But this is just for a small segment of the manufacturing sector. And so if we will even enlarge it to embrace all the other manufacturing sectors, it is good. I won't say that I'm important because there's no need. If you can get the goods from within, we are self-sufficient, we can buy from within. There's no need. If the local manufacturers thrive, it helps the local traders. Because manufacturing is not complete unless it reaches the final consumer. And we serve as the vehicle to sell the manufacturers. Because the manufacturers, the local manufacturers, they are not the traders who sell the goods. They produce and we buy. And then the shortfall is what we go outside and go and bring it. So I'm all for it, but it's just skewed to just a segment of the business community. When we reduce import duty on agric machinery, definitely it is positive because they are going to use it to produce food for all of us to eat. Sanitary pad for our women folk is going to help them. Our ladies who attend school who do not have the money to buy can also patronage. So we are not saying that there's nothing positive about those reliefs. What we are saying is that in the broader picture, our demands were not met because cost of doing business is excessively high. Cost of borrowing is excessively high. Clearing goods at the port is extorsively high, and that is not helping the growth of businesses. That's what we've said. And then what came to mind is the nuisance taxes that is not helping us. And then we mentioned the COVID levy. Because it's a nuisance tax, because it's a tax that came to be used temporarily. And then the special import levy was also introduced by the previous administration for temporary usage. Like we are in crisis, let's charge 2%, and then after the sunset, we will remove it. You see, so it has become taxes in perpetuity. That's why we mentioned those taxes. That otherwise, most of the taxes need to be put down. The excise duty that we have to pay on fruits, on the juices and all that, does not help.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay, please hold on for
and
me.
Then
bring in...
our major problem also had been the structure of the VAT. I'm very surprised that they didn't do anything about the structure of the VAT because it's not helping at all. It's not helping compliance. No wonder that they struggle to get the revenue because they are not thinking about compliance. They are only thinking about a high rate of taxes.
Okay. Please hold on. Please hold on, Joseph Obing. Let me bring in Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour here in at this point. And Dr. Twumasi Baffour, so you've heard from John Awuni, you've heard from Joseph Obeng, all traders, they're engaged in import or production, and they're telling you that their businesses cannot survive. They say even though they know we are in difficult times, at least a few things should have been done so that they don't have to pass everything on to the consumer. Would you agree that based on the measures put in place, many of us would not see improvement in the prices of the goods that we buy and could only, in certain instances, get worse off?
Winston, I have followed the discussion carefully, and as I started by saying that this budget, the expectation is what it is because it's a period for stabilization, and stabilization is important for businesses, right? And so whilst you are striving to attain that stabilization, it will come at a cost. And that cost is some of the issues that have been outlined. Essentially, what government needs to do is that to work strictly at the stabilization so that when inflation comes down, interest rates comes down, the whole environment is sanitized, we get a stronger hang on the depreciation of the currency, then the business environment improves. But as it is, I don't see how government could have given out a lot of the demands of businesses without really undermining some of the gains that it had already made. But for me especially, I think that in terms of the stability that this budget is striving to achieve, it still hinges on some tricky slope, in a sense that government is projecting to spend about 16.8% of GDP, which is 170 million. Expenditure is higher, and the difference is about 50 billion plus. And given that 2024 is an election year, I even anticipate that the expenditure would be more. The issue I have really is that in terms of the revenue side, government in this budget, you don't see a clear-cut strategic approach towards revenue mobilization. Why am I saying this? Yes, we are okay with the fact that there are no clear new tax handles. But the question is, the existing tax handles, how are they being made to work? And I give you a typical example. We've talked a lot about property taxes.
Yeah.
In the budget, you hear in the speech, I am yet to see the main document, but in the budget speech, the minister indicates that due to reforms, originally property taxes were ceded to the district assemblies, and with a lot of inefficiencies in collection and all, now it's being centralized. They've been able to reform to bring in and increase the number of properties from 1.3 million to about 12.4 million properties. The question you ask is, what is the strategy to generate revenue from all these 12.4 million properties that are scattered all over the place in the country? You look at the skyline of Accra. Why can't these property owners chip in to pay some amount? I mean, if you do the rough mathematics, even if each property is paying just 1,000 Ghana cedis per year, government can rake in more than a significant amount.
12 billion. That'll be 12 billion.
That would be 12 billion,
yes.
And that would be, in dollar terms, just about $1 billion. How much are we getting from IMF deal? So you see why our political class is not too excited about taxing property. It beats my imagination, really. And the point comes back to the issue of politics that comes at play in terms of all these issues, really. And so in this regard, I would say that there needs to be a lot more. On the revenue side, we have established that e-levy did not live up to expectation. My expectation would have been for them to have reduced the levy to 0.5, reduce the incentive for people to avoid it, and still rake in some decent returns. Because you will be directing traffic, you maximize on the scale, and for that matter, get in some revenue. Why did they not bring back road tolls, for instance? In this day and age, we talk about a PPP in infrastructure. What is the incentive? Can't we modernize it, adopt technology? We have been going on and on about digitalization. How are we efficiently using these steps that we have taken to be able to generate the revenue? Because we know that we are not able to generate because of the large informal sector nature of our economy. And so when you look at some of these, it appears that yeah, it's still business as usual, but I am not really surprised about the tone and the moderate way it's being presented. And the fact is that the emphasis is on macroeconomic stability and nothing else, really.
Great. I'll get back to you because I'd love to hear your take on the 1 trillion, economy that the finance minister talked about. But John Awuni, so Dr. Twumasi Baffour makes the point, and she's reiterated it. She wasn't expecting anything. So now that you have said your expectations were not met and everything is going to be the same when people go out tomorrow to go and buy Kenke in 2024, they will realize that the price is still the same, or maybe have increased, or maybe has increased. For you as a business, how is this budget going to impact you?
Clearly, the budget is not transformative in nature. Like the doctor has highlighted, I am not looking at selfish interest that, oh, well, my expectations, they should have removed this, should have removed that, and I will be happy my expectations have been met. But I'm looking at the collective. I'm looking at the national picture. Like he said, like the doctor said, you could have at least introduced road tolls. Where in this world you go and drive on highways for free? It doesn't happen. So you could have removed road tolls and then reduce e-levy. And the e-levy will affect the people they call grassroots. So the grassroots person, in whichever village the person is, will say that they have read the budget. So I think that in 2024, e-levy will not pay much e-levy again. And this is something that will be of jubilation or joy to the person. And that e-levy reduction will be balanced out by the road tolls. That's the kind of engineering I was expecting. COVID-19, we cannot continue to look at this, celebrate sickness by still having COVID-19 on our books. It's not a selfish interest like Food and Beverage Association, but I'm looking at it as a national picture. Why will we continue to still be punished with this particular tax? That 2024, you, Raymond, when you go and buy a bottle of water, you will still have to pay for COVID-19 levy 1%. You go and buy chicken, you pay COVID-19 levy. You go and buy fried rice, you pay for COVID-19. Why? Why can't they take it out and then balance it out somewhere? For instance, we have taxi drivers, and the taxi drivers massively for some time, for years now, they have the stamp duty. I hear in the budget the stamp duty is going to be increased, but by what percentage will it go up? So I think that there are various ways that we could have done. Still have our eye on the ball on the revenue we are going to mobilize, but there will still be some recognition that the citizens are suffering. So this is what I have thrown to the citizens. So COVID-19 will have direct impact on the price of chicken. It will have direct impact on the hotel industry. It will have impact on the price of a bottle of malt or a bottle of whatever drink it is. So e-levy will also have impact on the rural folks who also clearly use Momo. You haven't done that, and it's like business as usual. So it's like whatever we have been saying is just rubbish. And when we met at the Ghana Mutual Prosperity Dialogue, all the kingpins of businesses that were assembled there, everybody complained about the fact that private sector was not doing well, and there was diversion of investment to neighboring countries. How will this budget prevent that diversion of resources from this country to neighboring countries such as Togo and then Burkina Faso? We are looking at that because at the end of the day, if the private sector will continue to do grow negatively, meaning that we cannot absorb the youth that are brought out from the universities and the polytechnics and all the schools. That is a major threat for the country. That's a major threat for you, Raymond. Major threat for me. So that is our clear worry. So it's not about so that they should remove taxes and businesses can make more profit. No,
Okay.
that's not the case.
Okay.
So the budget is, for me, it's not transformative. It's just a modest budget just to stabilize. If the stabilization is not guaranteed, because clearly 2024, maybe by the second quarter, we were talking about exchange rate against the dollar has gone up, and some businesses' capital will be eroded. A lot of businesses have run full loss from January 2023 to this December we are going to. It's a complete loss. They've lost capital, and that is something the finance minister must recognize, that businesses are dying. It's not just a slogan. It is not just an advocacy. It is just the truth that we are saying.
Thank you.
So,
John Awuni, hold on a minute for me, John Awuni. Just hold on a minute for me. I'll get back to you so that we wrap it all up. This is the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. We still have John Awuni, Executive Chairman, Food and Beverages Association of Ghana, Dr. Priscilla Twumasi Baffour, Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana, and Joseph Obing, President, Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA. Dr. Twumasi Baffour, so one of the things the minister talked about yesterday was how we're likely to get to 1 trillion GDP value in 2024, and he says based on the fact that in 2016 the size of the economy was at 219 billion Ghana cedis, we have indeed come far. But some have asked the question, in 2016, if you did the conversion into dollars, it was $56 billion. In 2024, you're looking at about 75 to 80 billion dollars. And they say, how significant is this transformation?
Thank you, Winston. I believe that the significance of any transformation should be reflective in the lives of the people in the country. And so essentially, when you are dealing with numbers like this, they don't really mean much to the ordinary person. But rightfully, economies grow. Ghana is growing and transforming over time, and that is what we expect. The structure of the economy has changed from an agri-dependent economy to now a service-led economy, which is not what is expected, but it's happened in Ghana and other developing countries with all the challenges associated with joblessness in the economy. And so for me, the argument should be in terms of the per capita expenditure, for instance. Yes, the GDP is growing, but we should situate the discussion in context by looking at the dollar value, because you know that the cedi also depreciates over time. So in terms of the real value of the 1 trillion cedi, it may not mean much. And also, more importantly, the per capita income is what should be the emphasis should be on, because if the economy is growing but is growing at a slower pace compared to the population increase, then it will not be reflective in the standards of living of the people. And so for me, I think that we should be tracking the per capita income. But in terms of the well-being of people in a country, the indicators that are used are not really about per capita income, because we know that there are issues of inequality in terms of the distribution of the income that is generated. So we could look at something, for example, like the Human Development Index, where you are now taking into account the income, which is important. You are now taking into account the health, which is the life expectancy of the people, and that will take into account the quality of healthcare that is available to the people, and also you take into account the overall education of the people in terms of the quality of education that is on offer, which feeds into the quality of the workforce that is available, which leasing to people, generating decent jobs and all that. So that is where the discussion should be. But as always, one is not surprised when you hear some of these, because certainly politicians would always want to drum home some successes, whether perceived or real, to make some political gains, really.
Great, Dr. Twumasi Baffour. Let me thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. We're very grateful that you made time to join us. Let me just wrap it up with you, John Awuni and Joseph Obeng. John Awuni, final comments from you, and then I get to Joseph Obeng also.
Well, I would say that I think that the government, the finance minister, can do better in the mid-year budget. So we look forward to him taking these concerns critically and then let it reflect in the mid-year budget if there will be one, so that it can reflect in the lives of the people. Because you should not boast about $1 billion economy and then then it doesn't reflect in the lives of the people, like the doctor said. Sometimes our data is not even right. That the true data reflects in the lives of the people. That's those to be your data. But the kind of data that sometimes we run in this country, it's not something that I really have too much confidence in. So normally, I will look at the lives of the people, the transformative lives in the people, and I'll say that my economy is doing well.
Okay.
But that is what I would say in my conclusion remarks. I think that the business sector deserves more attention moving forward.
Thank you very much, John Awuni. Finally, from you, Joseph Obeng.
We have to move away from taxation to production. Our productivity is contained because of the high level of taxes that we pay. And so we have to think again. We are not being competitive in the continental free trade area because of the same reason of prices. Public is also reeling under the effect. Yeah, so that's what I have to say. We have to think again about this.
Thank you very much, Joseph Obeng, President, Ghana Union of Traders Associations, and John Awuni, Executive Chairman, Food and Beverages Association of Ghana. You also heard from Dr. Twumasi Baffour, who's Senior Lecturer, Department of Economics, University of Ghana.